now. There
No,
it is.
we are. It's
All
always
right.
so like so much anticipation. Are we live? Are we not live? And here we are.
I think we are. Yeah. It was the other day, my thing was loading for a good 20 seconds, and I was sitting here and I thought it wasn't live. And then I realized that it was. So there's 20 seconds to sit here. So
That's all right.
at least
Okay.
not today.
Well, at least not today. All right. Week 3. Here we are.
Yeah.
Lots of stuff going on.
So
And
much.
yeah. And last week we talked about naming and sort of branding and positioning and messaging and really giving thought to what this program was, who it's for, what we're calling it, and all of that. And so that conversation sort of has progressed, and we've landed on what this is going to be and what it's going to be called. And so now these conversations are evolving into a little bit more depth around like this the writing that you're doing right now. So if you have never launched a program or an offer or built something new, there is a lot of writing that happens. There is a lot that goes into promoting a live event and the launch and all of that sort of thing. So Karen's been kind of like you've been really immersed in writing and building content, and through that we're starting to get some information back, and we're starting to see what's kind of resonating with people. But also, as we're going through this, I think one of the things that has been really interesting is you're forcing yourself to continue thinking and evolving your thinking around this program and around like what you're doing with your clients. So why don't we sort of like start there and kind of recap some of the big things that have happened this week?
Yeah. Gosh, what has happened this week? My brain is like, ooh, in lots of places. So, what we did, I think that was kind of interesting is that in the co-creation process of working together on this, I think we identified some places where, for me, it's fuckery to do it because not. And when I say that, I think that one of the big themes in the program is that I want to help people identify things that are time wasters, but I think that that is always context specific. So what's a time waster for one person is not a time waster for another person because of their role, because of their goal, because of their strengths and weaknesses. So one of my strengths is not design. Um, we which anybody who has signed up for any of my stuff before knows that it's super basic. It's not fancy. It's kind of ugly and clunky looking, but I want to just make sure it works and it's there and it's out there. And I've been scrappy. I've been like, I'm gonna get it good enough and just share the thing, and I don't care if it's not pretty. But I think we thought, this does look a little more professional from a branding standpoint. It is worthwhile to spend a little bit of time on the appearance of things and the presentation. But it doesn't make sense for me to do some of those things. You're a lot better at that than I am. And so you were in a lot less time than I would have been able to, or actually, I don't know that I ever would have been able to with my current skill sets, get things to look as nice as how you did. And it just like from a visual standpoint of readability and just all of those things in presentation, it was like, I look at my stuff and I know it doesn't look that nice and I can't figure out how to fix it. And then you are like, let me play with this. And here it is. And it's like, whoa, that looks so much better. Like I couldn't have done that myself. And it would have taken me so much time and wasted so much energy I could have been spending somewhere else. So I think that is important for the offer creation process to understand those things. And then also, this is going to be something that I'm teaching my members in the program in a different context, of course, in more of a clinical setting. But it applies to both situations. Like what's fuckery for one person is not fuckery for another person. You have to figure out how to lean into your strengths and the activities that are going to give you the biggest bang for your buck, and you can leverage other people and other resources to do those other things for you.
Totally. And like the topic of design matters. I mean, that's like one of these things where I think that there's a balance, right? And you know, when you're selling a program that has as much intellect and high level thinking and academic thinking, and you're looking for those people who are at that higher level, I sort of think the delivery needs to match. Do I think everything needs to be professionally designed? Absolutely not. And I think there's a context to everything that we create, but we want the appearance of your program to match the quality of the content and the experience that your clients are going to, or your members are going to expect, right? And they're going to experience inside the program. So, to me, it almost does it a disservice to not at least bring the presentation up to a level that is like really matches the quality of what's inside.
Yeah. I mean, so there's that where it's like, I guess what I always thought was sort of frivolous about branding. And I'm like, oh, it's just appearance, like just about what people think. But that does matter.
Yes.
But also, just from a functional standpoint, it's easier to read. It's easier on the eyes. Like if something's not easy to read, it's not gonna pull people along. And so that from a functional standpoint, whether it is a page that you land on your website, it needs to pop out and be easy to read. The language needs to be easy. I was reading through, some posts the other day, and there was this one post from a person who I really like and respect, but like the post was worded weird, and I'm like, wait, what are they saying? Like what? And I only sat there and read it because I know, like, and trust this person. But if it was some random, I would have scrolled right past because the readability was weird. So just all those little subtle things that needed to be smoothed out. It's important because it needs to serve a purpose of grabbing people's attention and guiding them through the document in a way that is easy to read from their experience, and just to make it more accessible to them.
And I think even the design also gives them a feeling, right? A feeling of where they're at, and a feeling of energy or like resignation, right? So depending, I think I described some of the document as looking angry, right? And it's actually possible for the design choices that you make to almost like portray a sense of like rushing and urgency and like, why don't we get this, right?
I know. I don't even know. I'm always like, the only thing I can think of is, can you read the font?
Yeah.
There enough contrast from the background. That's all I can do. And then that does look kind of angry. I know what you mean by it looking angry. There's certain things where you look at the copy and it looks very internet markety template,
Yeah.
very, I don't even know what the word is. I don't know, loud.
Yeah. It's pushy, right? It's pushy and loud, and that was a style, and I think we're slowly moving away from that. But it's design incites feeling, right? And it's just another element of how you communicate your message. But like the higher level conversation here is one you and I have had a lot. And that is, as a business owner or as a therapist in practice, or you can apply this to any role that you might have. We want to be focused on the things that are highest value, that are most aligned with who we are and what we're trying to achieve. And I think one of the things you're bringing into this program is that understanding that there are pieces of your work that are much more valuable for you to be delivering than other things, but we get sold this bill of goods that we have to do it all, or there's some medal that we're going to get by being the most busy or the most, so how does this apply to in the context of your clients and your members?
So this reminds me of something I read in one of Dan Pink's book. It's something about, right, I can't remember the title,
Drive?
the right, not Drive, the right brained thinker.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I like that book.
So he gives a lot of clinical examples in there. So there's one he gives that's a chair, and then there's another example where he talks about doctors and bedside manner. So I'll talk about the chair first because that one's easier. It's like if you're going to go to the store and buy a chair, if you want this thing in your house, it's for a lot of people not just about the having a place to sit. It's also about how it looks and the whole experience. So you don't want this nasty, ugly, gross looking thing in your house. You want something that is beautiful, that feels expansive and like has this energy in your space. And I have no idea how to do any of that stuff because design is not my thing, but that's what people want. But also the chair has like, it can't, if you have a chair that does it, that is like sturdy, and then you have a chair that is beautiful, but it's going to fall apart, that's not good. You have to have both. So you have to have the structure and the stability there, but people are probably going to be more likely to buy the beautiful chair that's going to fall apart if you don't have the structure. So you need both. So I see it as, I have always focused on the structure, but it is hard to get people in and buy into what you're doing if you don't have those two things blended together. And then it's like you have this really quality product or service that's not getting enough people into it because the presentation was lacking.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also have the other way around where it's like people, they have this beautiful presentation, but things get in there and it makes the whole industry look bad because they had a bad experience. Whereas with clinicians, it's, if they're marketing and the way that they talk about their services and the way that they build relationships and the way that they interact just with the soft skills and the communication, if that is lacking, they could be really, really knowledgeable as a clinician, but they're going to have less follow through. They're not going to have as many connections, and they're not going to have as much influence in their facilities because they don't know how to interact with people. And so I think that it happens that way in clinical fields as well, where, I've heard the story. It's like the best marketer wins, not necessarily the best service provider or the best clinician. There are a lot of, I think this is a big frustration among clinicians where it's like certain people are sort of, getting a lot of clients in and getting a lot of people. And there's these other people who are really good and they feel disempowered and they're not getting as much attention. And they might actually be better clinicians than these other people, but they haven't quite figured out how to present it in a way that gets buy-in, that gets them leverage, that, allows them to create a situation in their facility or their business, depending on how they operate, because they don't know how to talk to people, they're not as successful, they're not making as much impact. So you can't just have one or the other. You have to have both, but they're different. They're important for different reasons, but they're both necessary. And I do think that you have to know which one. I think you have to have an idea of what good looks like and what quality work looks like in both. You don't always have to be the one doing both. There's different roles. And I think for the clinicians who are really good clinicians that want to evolve, it's good to understand that they, I think it's good to understand how that relationship works. That like, it doesn't, I think a lot of people feel a little icky about marketing in the clinical world. It's like, it's not, it's what you need to do in order to be able to make the impact that you can, whether it's official marketing for your business or if it's just marketing yourself, if you're working in a school district or if you're working in a hospital or whatever, just to, get more impact and work with other people.
But isn't that kind of what we call influence? Like if it's, for an individual, it's building some influence, it's building some, and I think, one of the things that you've been sort of mulling about in your head is how to help people believe that the changes that you're suggesting, these 5 shifts into this leadership sort of shift with clinicians, that these changes are possible. And this is a really interesting conversation to have in the context of both the business and the, you know, the people you're serving, because I think that when we're handling objections or we're trying to communicate, it's not pulling the wool over anyone's eyes, but it's about being able to meet them where they are right now and help them understand that these things that we're promising are possible.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about, you know, some of the work you've been doing there.
So I actually was doing some writing earlier today, and I did think of two separate situations where I was able to make a shift in how I saw myself and how I did how I showed up in the role that I was currently in,
Yeah.
based on where I was. So one example was early in my career when I'd only been in the schools for a couple of years. I really wasn't looking to leave yet, but I did want to just grow in the role that I was currently in. I didn't know at that time if I ever wanted to leave my position in the school. And then the other one was when I thought, okay, I am ready to move on to the next step. How do I do that? So this first time I was a school SLP. I had an elementary caseload, and the way that the building operated, there was this team of people who would, like, whenever there was a concern about a student, there would be this referral team, and the speech pathologist was not on the referral team. And so that was kind of a problem because we were sort of off in this silo and we weren't integrated with the other services. And so it sort of felt like people didn't really understand what to do with me. They didn't understand how to utilize me. And sometimes I was asked to do things by people that were like paraprofessional level type of things that maybe a teaching assistant or a parent volunteer could have done. Not that they weren't important, but they didn't make sense for somebody who had a master's degree and a license for therapy. Like, it wasn't a fit for my role. And it was just kind of hard to figure out how to get my foot in the door there, and kind of overwhelming. But I had a good relationship with a school psychologist who did have her foot in the door and was on the team. And as we interacted, we built that relationship, and she saw the value of what I could add. And so that was kind of my in, and that was really the in for the whole speech department into that problem solving team. And then we were very involved in a lot of the things that happened in the district after that. And so I was able to have a lot of really good experiences working as a team that I still use today in my current role, because of that. So really, it started with one key relationship. And I think that is really, it can get really overwhelming. And I think that sometimes people don't know where to start. There's all these people, and it's, where do I go? And so for me, it was starting with that one. And it's not like it only takes one, but sometimes it just takes one to get going. So,
Right.
And I think that was really important for me, is that you just start with the first one. You have to start with the first step, and that can lead to other things. That can lead to other connections and relationships. So that was really important. But then later on, when I had been there for, I would say, so I was there for 14 years. This was probably when I'd been there about 12 to 13 years. And I was looking for administrative positions. And I interviewed for a position in the district that I worked in. And I got really nervous. I started rambling. I did not do well in the interview. Probably wasn't a good fit anyways. But, so obviously I didn't get the position. And when I went in to get feedback from the superintendent, he was very direct with me, which I was getting all this fluffy praise from all these people about how wonderful I was. And he was the only one that was just really direct and honest with me about, how I showed up and sold myself and presented specific stories and examples of my leadership experience in that interview. And he was just very direct with me. And I said, I asked him, well, I'm not in a leadership position. So how can I get leadership experience? Because they always want this many years of experience. They always prefer previous experience in a lot of those positions. And I said, how do I get it if I can't get my foot in the door first? It's like that catch-22. And he said, you create it where you are now. Like, you have to start doing it now. And if you want to get to that next step, you have to just do the next step now. And then that can be your jumping off point. And so that was really good feedback. And it was hard to hear at the time, but it was really what I needed to hear. And so I've taken that with me as well. And again, I was at a different stage. I needed to hear something different, but that was, and it's really honestly what I did early on in my career. It was just framed differently. So I think it can be framed one way for one person and one way for another person. Really what I aim to do is help people design how it looks for them where they are. So maybe they have just started and they aren't really sure if they want to leave their current position, if they want to just do it differently, if they want to kind of explore what they like and what they don't like, or if they do have a specific goal in mind for the future. So it can be either way.
And so coming back to the original question is like, your job right now is to figure out how to, and in the business world, we call this handling objections, which is really just about helping other people believe what you already know to be true. And I think what I'm hearing from you is that one of the really great ways to do that is through story. Through story and anecdote and evidence that some of these shifts can be made. And so I think, our earlier conversation today was, you're like, I don't know what I believe. Like, I don't know. And this is another very common symptom of, this launch process is like, sometimes we just get to the point where we're like, there's too much and I'm second guessing myself. And I know that some of my clients who are listening to this will be like, I know I've got 4 clients launching in September, and some of them are in that very same place where they have these moments of just like, I'm second guessing all my things. And so, how have you found is like, what's really valuable for you in terms of moving through those kind of stuck places?
I mean, it goes back and forth every day, honestly. Today, what got me through was I just had to sit with it for a while. I had to give myself permission to not be productive when I was tired and just not able to get into a flow. And I think you just have to give yourself some time to remember the specific evidence from your life, because sometimes you think, I have nothing. I can't do this. I have no experience doing blah, 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 or whatever. And you just have to remember it. You have to sit with it long enough to pull it out. And I was kind of stuck this morning. And then later on, I came up with a handful of examples and was able to write some of the emails. Now they're still in rough draft form, but I was able to start moving through that process. And I think that for me right now, it's about the practice and just showing up and being consistent with the writing and the process, and letting the process work itself out.
One of the other things that I think a lot of business owners get stuck in is extreme thinking, right? It serves us to get to a place where we just go, oh, nothing's going to work. This is all going to be garbage, blah, blah, blah. And maybe it would be easier for me to just step away. And, it happens and it's okay. But the trick is to be able to manage those thoughts and understand where they're coming from. And sometimes we just need a break. And I know for you, you went for a run today and that kind of like cleared your head. And, whatever it is that works for all of us, I think it's critical to know that we're not just these robots that can churn out work like machines. We need to nurture and like respect our bodies and our physiology that has to be in good working order to move through an event like a launch, because it's a lot, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's also really real to be tired.
Yeah, I'm exhausted for a lot of reasons, but yeah, I think it's just keep just continuing to keep moving.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that the launch goes back a lot further than those couple weeks that we're in sort of quote unquote launch mode, right? Like we've got weeks and weeks and weeks of preparation, of writing, of design work, of assets that you're creating, et cetera, et cetera. And I like the parallel with the program that you're building right now because you talk about resources and assets in the context of a clinician, but I also like to talk about resources and assets inside of a business and what you're building that has leverage.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I think there's a lot of what I have come away with the whole idea of the process is that there is a lot of internal work that is not always tangible at the
yeah.
very beginning. And that if you are a very results oriented person and you can't see it yet, that can be hard. It can feel like you're not getting anywhere. So that's been something I've had to be okay with.
Yeah, and I imagine that that's good advice for the people that you're serving as well in
Yeah.
the context of their work.
Yeah,
Because
for sure.
what you're asking them to do in terms of these sort of five big shifts is very much intangible work at the beginning, right? And
Yeah.
it's you have to remain, you have to remain consistent in changing these habits, but also understanding kind of where you're going and why this work is important.
Yeah, I mean, it's a toggling back and forth of your end goal, beginning with the end in mind, or whatever you want to call it, but also understanding what you need to do in the moment to get there. And that is one of the things that I'm helping people do in order to feel like they can make a difference in a system that does have a lot of real limitations. So that is it is a very much about trusting the process, but also having something in place to help them show up consistently and work towards that end goal, even though it feels really far off. And even though you're really stuck in the weeds at some point and, fires come up that you need to put out and, you can get derailed and off track. And that's why you have a process and a plan so that you can adjust when those things happen.
Yeah, that concept of the master plan, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's how I was able to finish my dissertation. That's how what I do for my business, because I pretty much work project to project. It's, yeah, I mean, it's how I do a lot of things. It's what I used when I was coaching people who were finishing their dissertations and a thesis. So, yeah, it's definitely something that I've been able to stick with that's made a big difference in helping
Mhm.
stay create structure for myself when I am totally left to my own devices as a self-employed person.
Which is not too unusual,
Yeah,
especially for the clinicians who are also thinking about stepping out on their own, having a
yeah,
private practice, and even sometimes within the school systems, you can feel like you're left on your own, and that
yeah,
you need to build this resilience and build this internal system that is going to help you um, get through and keep progressive. I think that the master plan or the structure is part of that, but it's also the mindset. Like it's also the understanding of like a lot of what you're talking about is helping people shift what they perceive to be control from external sources to internal sources. That's that big belief and shift because or shift in belief because I think a lot of people are out there, just kind of putting their hands in the air and saying we're at the mercy of all of these external, people and organizations and rules and regulation. So you've developed that in spades, but what do these folks need to start doing to get there as well?
I think you do have to realize that some of those constraints are real, but it doesn't necessarily, the way that you respond to them and the impact that they have, you do have some control over that. And you also do have a lot of more control over your time and the way you plan your time and your energy, regardless of those things that you can't control. And when it comes to the master plan, that whole concept is, I think it's important for somebody like me who's self-employed, and I do have freedom in my schedule, which means I have to have a process to keep myself in line, but also for people who do have a schedule where they've got sessions back to back and they don't feel like they have a lot of autonomy in that. Understanding what is something that is, this is a constraint here, understanding what your constraints are, but also working within them to figure out where the wiggle room is. So that's why one of the first things that I would have people do is think about that and think about what the actual constraints are, because a lot of times they're legitimate. You have to understand, especially when you have to think about laws and compliance and things like that. You have to make sure that you have your ducks in a row before you move forward. And a lot of times doing that and sort of getting all that stuff out on the table and just sort of checking off all those boxes can bring a sense of relief and just, lift some of the weight off of you, and so that you can move forward and think more expansively. And that's where I like to kind of start and think about that. But also at the same time, while they're doing that, think about what their dream scenario is, and then figuring out how to work backwards and block out time for that, knowing that, yes, we have these constraints, but here's where I have that wiggle room where I can block out that time and show up every day and be consistent with it. So it's giving them a game plan for, what I like to refer to as planning and preparation or risk mitigation, and minimizing some of the things that are problems that might be inconveniences, or really big problems that cause you to not be able to show up in a way that you want to for your clients. If you are aware of what those things are, that can also be something that informs what your long-term project is. Like, if you are in a situation where you only have a certain number of minutes with your students, for example, and you know that they need more support, your additional time that you spend on your passion project could be creating assets that are going to help them get support across other situations, knowing that you have this legitimate constraint of, I can only see students for 30 minutes a week. So it could be something like you're putting together a manual or a training resource that you can share with teachers or other people that you work with to, train them. You can create some kind of a program or materials for parent volunteers or peer tutors, or you can start to develop some of those different tools and assets that are going to help take what you do in your sessions and expand your reach. And those, in a way, some of those passion projects are coming from those constraints. A lot of the things that are really innovative ideas that have come out with businesses, with people who've created really great community programs or programs in their school, they came about because somebody saw a problem or a constraint. So it's this marriage between those two, where
Yeah.
you're kind of embracing them, but you're also using them to think expansively about what you can do with your clients.
Innovation comes from, from a need, right?
Yeah.
And it comes from a problem or a constraint or something that, it can be also entertainment, right? But it is derived from something that has friction, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think even in a clinical setting, they're like micro innovations that you can create within your own work. So I like that. And I think that, in your practice inside your business and in the practice of your clients inside their work, I think both apply. I want to shift topics for a second, because one of the things, and this is kind of relevant to what you're just saying, but one of the things about a launch is that you're kind of doing everything all at once, right? And you are writing, and you are designing, and you are building, and you are, setting up technical stuff, and you are, you know, marketing, and you are designing programs, and building resources, everything all at once. So
Mhm.
we are moving into the phase of your launch where we're starting to focus on outreach and
Yes.
connections and
Mhm.
collaborations. This is an interesting part of the launch for me, for you, because you are entering into new markets, new worlds, new places that you haven't played before.
Yeah.
So, talk to me a little bit about how that's feeling.
I am excited and terrified at the same time. Like I just want to like I just want to do it so bad. Like I want to have the relationships and the connection so bad, but I've been in my own little world of like blogging by myself and sort of having some interactions with people, but not having really any true in-depth collaborations on a regular basis, and not really having that be a habit and a cornerstone piece of my strategy for growth, just for how I serve my clients and customers. So I am just, it's really unfamiliar, and I'm trying to get a picture in my head of how that looks so that I can move forward with clarity. But at the same time, it just feels very unfamiliar and scary, but I can't I can't not do it anymore. It's to that point where before it was like, you have those things where you keep putting it off, you keep putting it off, and then it gets to the point where it's almost too painful to stay put, that you have to just do it already. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. And I have a list of people, and I have an idea of where I want to go my first month in the program, and I have to figure out how that looks.
Yeah. And I think there are a couple of things to notice here. One of them was, you're not the only person I've heard this from, that some of the hesitancy to go out and like reach out to people is just not being totally clear on what it is that you're reaching out for, and maybe not having the right container to um, to justify the context of the outreach. So changing that has been one thing. But also I think there's all these people out there and all these programs out there that sell some sort of in the box approach to outreach and networking, where you do the same thing all the time. But to me, the
Yeah.
quality of outreach and networking is like what I call sniper marketing, right? So every relationship you have, these are human beings, and every relationship that you have with them has to be individualized and has to be contextual and needs to be focused on who that person is and the role that they can play inside of the work that you're doing.
Yeah.
And so we look at each person as an individual rather than like give you a template letter to go out and, how you get those on LinkedIn and you get those, and you always know, right? Like you haven't really thought about who I am. Somebody sent me an email
Oh
the other
my God.
day.
Yeah, they're the worst. And they've been doubling down since Facebook ads are a little bit more challenging and expensive than they used to be. People are doubling down on the sliding into the DMs and sending you a generic message. They're doubling down on that strategy. I
But
used
even
to talk to those people because sometimes the people that were doing them would actually, there weren't as many and they were more relevant. But now there's so many people doing them and they're not good. They're not good at it.
no, I
Like,
had
what do you
somebody
want?
like,
What are you selling? Get to the point. I know what you're doing. Just show
yeah,
me your thing so I can decide if it's for me or not.
you
Like
can't
I,
build a relationship in like 2 days.
yeah,
You just
they're
can't. And also, I've been getting these emails from people, and I keep sending them to my friend Natalie, because now we have this like bank of them because they're also humorous. But like this totally blank, like template email. Oh, hi, we listened to all of the episodes on your podcast and we have a guest who we think would be wonderful, for all of your content around the travel industry. And I'm like, really? My content around the travel industry? I have no content around the travel industry. I'm not in the travel industry. I don't did you even read who I am? Or I got one about safety helmets too. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I mean, I wear them.
Well, the other thing is that a lot of the outreach is, it's not just the one template where you can tell that they copied and pasted an email and they didn't actually read your stuff. It's just really generic. Like, you have fresh, amazing content. Can I post a guest post on your blog or something totally
fresh
generic?
and amazing, Karen?
I know.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. And I do get some about, I get some about disability, sometimes different prosthetic devices and stuff, because I talk about different disabilities on my blog, but they clearly don't understand what it's about.
Yeah.
Because, you can just tell. But I think that what is sometimes frustrating as a person trying to figure out how to leverage different strategies is that some people are like I know somebody who teaches people how to guest post, and that's fine. That used to work in 2005, but, and I've done guest posts before, and it's not like I wouldn't be open to doing one in the future, but it's just these generic email templates to reach out to people for a guest post. Now it's more podcast interviews that I would say is more of the thing, which I might do that as well. But it's the type of people that I want to reach out to. A lot of them, that's not their platform. That's not where they are. They might be at a university. They might be part of a professional licensing board or something like that. Or maybe I'm going to talk to someone who is an administrator at a school district or something like that. So the networking, just the generic, here's an email to pitch people for guest posts and here's an email for podcasts, it doesn't quite work. It's too cookie cutter, and it doesn't necessarily show you how to build a real relationship with that person. And so I don't want to do it like that. That cookie cutter approach has never worked great for me.
Yeah.
Just because it's too generic. So I just wanted something a little more customized, because I am going to be all of my initiatives. I'm not going to be like, this month I'm guest posting, this month I'm podcasting. It's more like, this month, this is the topic I'm going to be talking about. And so all of my outreach and all of my connecting is going to be around this topic. In October, when I launch, I want to talk about reading curriculums in the schools. So I have a whole bunch of different people who I want to reach out to around that, across different disciplines and across different just things that they do. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get a hold of all these people, but I have to think about, how I'm going to do that. So it's going to be different for everybody.
And I don't think
I
think it's always going to be this way. Like, in my experience, there is no templated approach to outreach, because these are human beings. And if you try it, it's very obvious that it is, and it's not effective. So we have to be really clear on what the ask is for each of these individuals as different human beings, right? And there's something to be said for, hey, we were both at a conference together, and like, that's a great to connect. Like, what did you think about this event? So fine, something like that. That's, I think, the only time that you can really get away with something a little bit more generic, but you're still it's just a foot in the door to start creating the relationship, but the relationship has to be specific and personal, especially with the types of people that you're starting to reach out to.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So what do we
have a game plan, but we've got to figure that one out.
Yeah. So what have we got going on now for the next week?
I've got these emails for the the live event week.
Yep.
And then I have to figure out some details of what I'm going to talk about during the live event. So really we're talking inviting people to the live event and having the thing, and then also follow up after. So it's really just the week before and the week after, all of that. So we're doing that, which it is going to be a live event, but it's going to be something that's open on an ongoing basis. But I am going to be like, it's open, go get it. So there is going to be buzz around the first week, even though it is something that if people aren't doing it as it's going on, they can go back and self-pace. So that is an experiment in itself. And then, so that's really where we are, but we also need to talk about the outreach for the launch. And then it's also the first month in the program, really, because I want it to be around that topic. So we have to figure that out.
Yeah. So multiple tracks of any of you who haven't taken on a launch yet, like you got to go in with some resilience, because there is, multiple tracks of lots of work going on at the same time. And so, we have to be very organized.
I am doing some ads. I did meet with my Facebook ads manager to get some stuff to her. So I am putting a little bit of money behind it, not anything crazy, but just a little bit to give it some juice.
And this is also like all the beginning of the experiment, right? Because even with the ads, like we've got new audience, new positioning, all of that. So, you're really kind of building from scratch again, which is exciting.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to, I want to get to the point where we have enough data that we know it's something that people want, it's working well, and we can pour gasoline on the fire. And that's when I'm really going to be putting my energy into, well, actually, I don't have to, because I have a wonderful ads person who's putting her into that, putting the energy into making sure she has the strategy and the stuff for that. And then she'll be doing that for me. And then I'll be focusing on the outreach and also the continuous dynamic content in the program and all of that. But that's after we get through this.
Yeah. And the key is the organization and the planning, and just making sure we're like one thing at a time. Well, 4 things at a time.
Yeah.
Not more than that. Yeah. It's all timing. Okay. I'm excited to have the conversation about your outreach and your collaborations, because I think it's going to be such a huge and important part of your strategy. So next week we can check in on how that's going. And next week we'll have some good information about what this live event is going to look like. And we'll just keep inching forward.
Yep.
Here we go.
Forward. Indeed.
All right. So until next week.
Yeah.
Just keep going.
Yep.
All right. Thank you all for being with us today. And check back in next Thursday when we're going to go live and carry on the conversation.
Yep. All right. See everybody next week.
See ya later.